What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Book of Dread. My name's Corey,
And my name might be Jordan.
and we're here to review All Hallows Eve, the shittiest, worst, diabolical anthology film I've ever fucking seen.
I mean, that's not really that bad
It was
because
fucking terrible.
it was good for the budget. I'm pretty sure the budget was like $10,000 or something.
Okay,
So I mean, it was decent for that.
when's the movie made?
I think it was 2013.
Ugh. Let's
I
see.
mean,
Yeah, 2013. Yeah.
yeah, as far as 2013 goes, it's not like that. I mean, it's nothing like
Not like what?
cinematic masterpiece that
Oh,
like Quarantine was, but
yeah. I don't think I've seen that.
I think that was from 2013. That's the one with is it Angelina Jolie or was it? I can't remember. It's like a larger name actor, but anyways,
So I guess you know what, man. Since you love it so much, you can just go ahead and explain what it's about. This movie is basically a four-part movie, with the fourth part being like, I guess you could say, in the real world. So basically, it's Halloween night, and you have these two kids, fucking snot-nosed shitheads, and the little boy that looks like the epitome of any 14-year-old in 2015 America,
yeah,
wearing the fucking
he like screams. He screams like that 2010s era, like kid that just wears like everything American Eagle or Hollister.
so it's Halloween night. And it's a babysitter. She's babysitting these two kids while the parents are gone, watching Night of the Living Dead. Babysitter comes in, and I believe she makes some sort of big deal about how the kids aren't watching it, so she turns it off. And the little boy,
No. She made a big deal about how it was time for them to do pumpkin carving so they could get to
oh yeah,
bed.
yeah, yeah, that's right, that's right.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, I was watching that." So she turned it back on, and the little boy's going through his candy, and what did he find?
Finds a mysterious VHS tape.
Yeah,
So
so
spooky.
very, very suspicious.
And like this is one of the things about it. This is one of the gripes that I did have for that particular part when they discover this in the candy bag. Like immediately the babysitter is already like suspicious and on something about it. Like this is well,
She,
I mean,
I wrote this down when we were watching the movie. They used the line, "Who knows what's on this?" like 10 million fucking times. So she
yeah,
was
like
making a big deal about it.
yeah, because like it could just be you could pawn it off as like a situation of okay, well, it was like a older, couple that had grandkids and they left behind like a Pokemon VHS and they just, they didn't really care or have anything to give out to anybody. They might be, dormant and don't really get out like that. And they're like, oh, I just have this VHS tape. It's no use to us anymore. It's not like Gerald's coming back.
Yeah. You know what I
There's
would have
no
liked more? Not necessarily showing Art the clown giving the boy the tape and like making this big deal about it, like how like funny and stupid he is, but like basically this like them going up to the door and Art just kind of reaching out of this door with like blood on his hand and stuff. You don't see his face, all you see is his arm and his hand, and then places the tape in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would have been actually a really really good way to do that because it would have been foreshadowing and it would have also already started a human like connection to all that's happening.
Yeah.
But it also just would have been like very ominous and spooky.
Yeah.
But the kid, just like they did with the tape when they watched it, could have just passed it off as like, oh, just whatever.
Yeah.
Person dressed up.
It's already established that the kids do not give a fuck what the babysitter says. They don't care. And so she, like I said 10 million times, she said, "Who knows what's on this tape?" And I guess she just gave in. She just gave in to the boy. And she put the
I
tape in.
actually I actually wanted to point something else out too about the babysitter overall. I think it's probably boring, but at the same time, I feel it's kind of important to explain how characters are like seen and felt. But it's kind of obvious that she doesn't really have like a full grasp on babysitting and controlling kids
Yeah.
because
Oh,
she
that's
tries to
right.
play. Yeah, she tries to like play in heavy to the little girl and play to her favor, and then
Yeah.
like just kind of shrug off the little boy.
Be-
But
be-
in the end, she kind of just
Yeah. Well, in the movie, at some point when she's on the phone with her friend D, I guess is her name, and she said something about how, oh well, I guess it's the mother she's talking about. She's like, oh, she never really asked me to do anything, so how could I say no? So I'm guessing like she's not really a babysitter. She's just like, just a friend of the mom's, and she couldn't turn her down because of
yeah.
everything that the mom I guess does for her. So,
Yeah, and
which
yeah, that does make sense too, because there's another point in the movie where she's like, "Oh, how did I let them talk me into this?" So yeah, I mean the first segment, and these are sourced from Wiki, by the way. I want to go ahead and point that out so we don't get like plagiarism stuff
yeah,
when we're only at like 2 subs.
yeah,
Um, anyways, so the first segment features a young woman named Casey who is drugged and kidnapped by Art the Clown while waiting for a train. Basically, what happened is, she's down there, right? They came through. Well, she goes to the bathroom for a second, and then she comes back shortly after and sits down, and she's just sitting there reading. And she looks up and notices Art the Clown like staring at her.
oh yeah,
And yeah, like in this particular short film, Art is kind of he's like in a rough stage. Like this was definitely the first thing that they filmed for the entire film. Like it's so obvious that there is like no budget for this.
yeah,
Um
no fucking
yeah,
budget.
he doesn't look anything like he does in the second or third segments. Anyways, he looks at her and he's like smiling or whatever. She like looks back down at her book and he starts honking a horn at her,
Yeah,
like
the
messing with her.
normal annoying fucking thing he does. Yeah,
Yeah. And she asks him if he can stop and he um gets like a surprised look and then comes over and sits next to her and he sort of plays up his normal antics. But eventually he hands her this rose and he's laughing at her. And then she notices in the rose there's like bugs crawling around in it and she freaks out and she tries to like run away and
I
he
thought it was
stops her.
bees. I legit thought it was a bee,
Yeah.
and it wasn't until it drops to the ground you notice it's like a couple big ass wood roaches.
Yeah. Ugh. And
Yeah,
he ends up stopping her and then he like, you know, sticks a syringe on her. She has like these crazy hallucinations. So it's kind of different.
like Scarecrow from
Yeah.
Batman. Yeah. So,
That's exactly sort of that's sort of the exact thing that he does to her. Yeah.
yeah.
He sort of plays into that sort of realm of things. But after that, she awakens and finds herself chained in a room with 2 other women, Kristen and Sarah, which I don't really. Do they explain their names? I don't remember.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Uh, when Sarah is dragged away by her chain, so there's kind of a little bit of like arguing about why they're there, and one of the girls that was there before Casey, who's like the girl reading the book, uh, yeah, one of those girls ends up getting like dragged away, like down a hole. Casey and Kristen, the girl from the train, and the other girl that was there, decide to follow where their chains lead because that's visibly like their only way out is to get off the chain. Um, but upon reaching the end of the chains, Casey attempts to break the chains with a large rock, but is interrupted by a deformed humanoid who dismembers Kristen with a cleaver.
I think
That's
chops
one of the
off her
girls that's been
hand.
chained. Yeah, he
Yeah.
chops off her hand, and the effects are trash. You
It's
can
it's
definitely.
yeah, it's so bad.
That's the thing for me is like I get pretty like grossed out by gore like that myself. It's very uh it's like a trigger for me. Like if I see any sort of like skin getting ripped off or stuff like that, it usually sort of gets me. And I mean certain limbs and stuff like that could kind of do the same sort of effect for me, but it's so like cheesy and badly done that
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really hard to even come close because it literally looks like a arm that you'd get at like Spirit Halloween. So the deformed humanoid accidentally ends up setting Casey, the train girl, free. But she pretty soon after she like runs into what she appears to her, and I'm guessing this is still due to like the drugs from before.
Yeah.
It appears to her as like just a regular guy pushing a cart of
Oh
stuff.
yeah, yeah, like a homeless
Um,
guy. Yeah.
yeah, she comes up on him though, and she's asking him, pleading for help or whatever, and he's just silent. He does nothing.
Yeah.
And eventually, she like looks down at what he has in the
Shopping
buggy that
cart.
he's pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's got Kristen's hand in there.
Yep.
And she looks back up, and it's a like cultist of some sort.
Another scarecrow thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so she ends up getting captured by that, and she wakes up, and she's tied down, and she's surrounded by like a whole slew of these cultist witches, or whatever you want to call them. And she, I believe she like escapes for a second from them, but then she gets trapped again. But they have her down on a table, and she's watching them with like a mother that's pregnant, that's hanging down from something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, one of the cultists goes up and has like a little scalpel or something like that, and just stabs right into the pregnant girl's belly.
Now here's what I will say. This it was a good like 20 seconds of this pregnant woman chained up, just sitting there saying no, please do not. And it really just kind of felt like snuff shit.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because like the sort of snuff like theme plays throughout the whole film, really.
Yeah, there's a lot in this movie.
And then this particular short film, like, it's very, very ominous. Kind of feels like a fever dream, I guess, but like a nightmare. Anyways, so they go ahead and C-section this baby out, and they also let the blood from like her gaping hole of a stomach ooze out into this cup, I guess like chalice if you want to call it. And eventually it's like taken to, I guess you would assume, to be the cult leader, and they drink of the cup or whatever, and he ends up taking off his robe, and it's revealed to be the devil, and Casey is still on this table, and the cult leaders like rip her clothes off, and she essentially gets
yeah.
So that was basically the end of that. And afterwards, the babysitter turns it off and sends the kids off to bed. And there's some more to that, but what is kind of like your thoughts essentially on the whole thing?
We'll get into the second segment, but I felt like it would have been better if the second segment was the first segment. And I'll kind of explain that at the end, but there was really no plot, to the first one. The acting was very, 2010s ish. Cinematography, I know it's a low budget film. So they did good with what they had for cinematography. Like I liked the set. It's kind of this like underground railway station, the mechanical room and stuff like that. And they have a lot of red in this, like a lot of red. So it just felt like a serial killer's lair, you know what I mean? If we've been to New York City, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of chaos on the top. Lots of chaos. And when you go into the subway station, at least for when we did, wasn't any chaos. It was kind of bare. Nobody was really there. But imagine what's up underneath that railway station. You know what I mean? So I like to think of it in like this real way where shit like this can happen, and it probably does happen. But I like how they kind of mixed in like fantasy with realistic things. So I love the color, and they did a really good job of making it look like some like monster lair. The editing was weird, but the acting from the main girl, that was fine. But like Kristen and Sarah were, it was
They
so
were
bad.
abysmal. Yeah, they were.
It was like
It
they
was
just
pretty
grabbed them
obvious.
off the
But
street and like, come on, you want to be a part of this movie? So, and you know what I thought though? This would have been a really good way of explaining how art came to be. Because thinking back on it now in this first segment, this could have been a major, which this is the first film. This is the first film you see Art the Clown, right? So I get it. But they could have done very well with setting up Art's lore because we've seen in other movies where Art is like invincible, I guess. Like he can take a lot of shit, you know what I mean?
yeah, he's a demon.
Yeah. So he drugs Casey and she dies, essentially, from Satan. So it makes me think that maybe Art is like feeding these people down there for him to stay powerful and do all of his sadistic things. It makes me think that maybe Art is like feeding these demons and Satan down there, and he gets to stay powerful and sadistic. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I feel like, yeah, like you were saying, there wasn't really much of a plot. I feel like the first part and the second part kind of, or not the first part, the first part and the last part of it are kind of the plot of the movie or of the short film, but it's visual storytelling. It
Yeah.
isn't really like explaining itself through dialogue or through
Yeah,
like
I
lore
agree.
means of
I think
anything
that's
like
a good
that.
way of explaining it. Yeah, it's just it shows it through the cinematography. So
But I mean, like the acting, yeah, it was pretty trash, and I think that's sort of consistent throughout all of Damien Leone's films. I feel like, in a way, it's kind of something more that he just likes to do because I think he feels that it adds more of that '80s sense to his films.
yeah,
Um, but it's definitely much more noticeable and bad in this movie. There's even a bad part for like Casey the train girl. Like when she first gets there and she's chained up, she's not even there for like 10 minutes.
yeah.
And
No,
and
it's
she's
like
already she's
she
already like,
literally woke
I've
up
got to
five
get
minutes
out of
ago.
here. I can't be here the rest of my life.
Here's what I will say: the weirdest part of this is not any of the snuff stuff. The weirdest part is that the boy was way too into it.
Oh yeah, he had a big smile on his face the whole
This
time.
this kid was fucking licking his lips to this shit. Sarah, the babysitter, she turns it off immediately after as soon as Casey's about to get essayed, right? Um, she turns it off and says, "All right, kids, it's time for bed. You can't watch this anymore." So kids go to bed, and the snot-nosed little boy fucking spits his toothpaste and his sister Tia's hair.
Yeah.
And this is when Sarah is on the phone with Dee. That's where she goes in and explains that she's a friend of the mother, and how the mother never asked her for anything, and that's why she's babysitting them on Halloween night. And then I guess after the phone call, she just kind of goes back and she's brought back to the tape for whatever fucking weird reason. And she puts the tape back in, and we get on to the second segment. So, the second segment features Caroline, a woman who had just moved into a countryside home. And it is shown that her husband is an artist, a painter, to be specific. There's
I
this.
wanted to point out too for that, like it's very like obviously I mean some short films kind of go this direction, but if you really think of it, like the overall sort of idea of the plot right off the bat is very very cheesy. Like it's very sort of kid like it literally sounds like something. She's like he loves to paint, but his newest painting is just something I'm terrified of, and I told him to keep it away from me. But I mean, like it seems like something that you would like a plot that you would see in like a Goosebumps or Are You
Yeah,
Afraid of the Dark episode.
yeah. Which I did want to bring in, and this is the last thing I'll say about the first segment. I just forgot to put it in there. The monster masks looked literally ripped out of Goosebumps.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just straight Goosebumps. Kind of what Jordan was saying. Like, it's this very childlike trope that oh, well, my husband's a painter and he's away and we just moved here. And, there's this painting that he painted, and he says he doesn't even remember painting it. He just kind of woke up and it was on the canvas. And it's
Yeah,
really weird, and I've got it
the
covered
lame
up.
explanation.
Yeah, I got it covered up because it just freaks me out. So, and she's on the phone with a friend, and she said something very weird. So me and Jordan live in the South. They're talking about deer, and I'm guessing I think she said they're from New York or somewhere like that, some big city, and it's like their first time living in the country. For our Southern viewers, you will know, if you don't hunt, you despise deer, because deer, if you do not hunt, deer are simply there for an insurance claim.
Hmm?
You could be having the time of your fucking life driving home, and then you hit it, and then your car's in a million pieces. So she said something. Deer symbolize peace and the beginning of new adventures. That's what her friend said. I mean, maybe deer do symbolize that, but that, if it does, that is, I hate that. I absolutely hate it.
Yeah, it felt so weird as far as like the overall story because it
Yeah.
just doesn't. It's never followed up on.
A bright object crashes near the house at night, and a power outage occurs. So Caroline finds that her phone and car are malfunctioning. So she tries to go outside and get in her car, and I thought this was going to be like or the deer thing was a foreshadowing moment. So like in the movie, we're sitting there and we're watching it, and she goes up to the car and she gets in it. I'm like, there's no fucking way that the same deer she saw in her front lawn, she's gonna hit the fucking deer, she's gonna crash. That's what's gonna happen. Well, she gets in her car and her car doesn't even fucking start. She goes in, she's very fucking creeped out, and like she keeps hearing like footsteps upstairs, and like somebody knocking on the door, not necessarily knocking, but like banging around the house.
Another thing about it is she assumed it to be basically like a meteor that
Yeah,
had landed, was the flash of light, and that's why like her car battery is dead, her phone's not working, and all
yeah.
this.
She said something about
Um,
the same one in Russia. That was the
yeah, she
line she
said
said.
there was like an odd sort of like conspiracy line just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, she
'Cause-
decides to just run back into the house because I guess she's just not really scared. She doesn't think there's really anything that's making this happen other than just a meteor.
So then John, this is the first time we hear from him. He said, just stay in the house and don't go outside, and we'll be there. Um, was it before like that particular phone call? Because I know there's another one. Was it before or after she noticed the aliens? Because there's fucking aliens. But
Um, so she gets on the phone and well, she gets back into the house after the car and everything, and um she's looking around and she hears a sound.
yeah,
And she gets on the phone with John again, and she's saying how scared she is and how she thinks there might be somebody there.
yeah, that's right, that's
And
right.
yeah, that's when behind her you can sort of see like
Oh yeah, it was a
like
really good
curtain
scene.
on the ground
Yeah,
starting to raise up.
she discovers after that, after just walking around the house and things are happening and stuff like that, her husband's like, well, just stay in the house, don't go outside, and just call the cops. The alien kind of appears. I like the introduction to the alien, like where he just kind of pops up. Very cool design. They knew, we've got a small budget. Let's just try to do something really, really cool, but very simple. So then it, just immediately breaks into this action scene, and it's just a chase scene. The alien's chasing her all around the house, and she, I believe, stabs the alien.
Yeah.
Which is really funny because she's running up the steps, and she kind of falls on the steps, but it wasn't a hard fall, and she act like she like broke her fucking ankle and she can't get back up. So she stabs the alien, she runs back upstairs, and she locks herself in the bathroom. And the alien's trying to like find her. And he does this really cool thing where he turns on like the sonar thing, but it just sends a very high frequency pitch noise, and she starts fucking screaming. I
And
guess
she
because
bleeds out of her nose.
yeah, I guess because it was breaking her eardrums. And that's when the alien went back up there. Then he's trying to get her again, and she pulls the fucking tube out, and she runs away again. And the alien kind of just puts back this tube into his face, and she hides in a room underneath the staircase. The alien's doing his normal fucking thing again, and it's really funny, and you could tell the actors were having a really good time with it. Where the alien was kind of doing this weird fucking dance move, yeah, and not really necessarily a dance move, but it's just the way that they walk, and they're trying to make their bodies feel very heavy but flowing.
She's feeling the gravity.
Yeah, then Caroline, out of nowhere, it's a fucking jump scare. The phone fucking rings. John, she's on the phone and she's like, John, you have to get home now. You have to get home. There's something really weird going on. There's aliens or whatever. They're trying to kill me. And the alien just fucking swings open the door and grabs her by her ankles and starts dragging her out. She tries to hold on to stuff. In that painting at the very beginning of this segment, she holds on to the sheet. She just kind of rips the cloth off, and it's fucking Art the Clown. I feel like it would have been better without Art being on the painting, but I think this segment should have been the first segment, because I think
Yeah,
that
it
it
would have
would,
probably worked a little bit better. Like the first segment would have been much better as like the second or third.
yeah,
Because it was
because
just a bit much to start with.
it would have been easier to explain why the babysitter Sarah would have gone back in and started watching it again, because this
Yeah.
one isn't crazy at all.
No, it could
Um,
easily just be a horror film.
yeah, just a shitty, schlocky horror film. And she could have just told the kids, after it was up, all right, kids, it's time to go to bed. That was the time you were supposed to have for carving pumpkins. Now it's time to go to bed. You guys go upstairs. And it would have been easier for me to I guess justify for her to put the tape back on, because she's got nothing else to do except for wait for the parents to get home, right?
Yeah, and drink wine.
But if it were me, why the fuck am I going to sit there and take another chance on something after what I just saw? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
With the first
something that's
segment.
like completely diabolical.
Yeah. So my thoughts are, I like the design of the alien. I thought it was really cool, really simple. The actors, you could tell they were having a lot of fun, which makes it really, really good. I love seeing. It makes me feel better watching something where the actors were having fun with it. I don't like the fact that they put Art the Clown on the painting, just because that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I mean that could just be sort of a side effect of them still trying to figure stuff out, because it's obvious, like, because they did a short film with Art way before this, and then they do like all three of these, and Art's there all the way through. It seemed like this was sort of like their baby, and they were really trying to push it.
Yeah.
They were trying to push Art into like acceptance.
One thing we didn't get into, though, that we need to explain, is after the first segment, Tia, which is the daughter, and after they're done like brushing their teeth and stuff, um, she goes into her bedroom, and like the closet door is kind of open, and she goes to open it, but I think it cuts to Sarah downstairs on the phone or whatever, or she doesn't do it or whatever. So she goes into her brother's room and says, "Can I sleep with you now?" So it kind of sets up, I guess, for what happens at the end. So
Yeah,
anyway, I just needed to get that in there. But all around, this was my favorite segment, just because it kind of made a little bit more sense, you know, even though it's fucking like a meteor and then aliens come down or whatever. But the music when she's standing in the kitchen, before the meteor comes down, music was great. Oh, it was
yeah,
really
like
good.
very 80s, and it's like
Yeah.
the same sort of like little tunes that they use for Terrifier.
Yeah, the cinematography, the best part about that was the little glimpse you get of the sheet.
Yeah.
That was, like I said, no soundtrack. It was just, and it's not one of those things where if you blink you miss it. So,
No.
you see it, and they want you to see it, and I thought it was great. The acting was okay. So,
Think like the cinematography was very sort of like basic sort of 80s stuff. Like you
yeah.
have the shot from outside the house, and most of the like scenes, it's very like personal stuff with Caroline, her doing her things and what she's going through. And then you have that scene obviously with the sheet rising, like that's straight out of something like Halloween. You have Michael Myers rising from the sheet from behind somebody, and then the sheet comes off and he comes after him. Something that's even still used today, honestly. It's just kind of a trope. And the acting is basic stuff. Caroline obviously was, somebody that was like an amateur actor. They got her, and she played sort of, um, the damsel in distress. Uh, but I still can't say enough about how much I love like the alien and all that. I don't think this one was my favorite, but it was definitely pretty strong. And as far as like a recreating an 80s slasher sort of thing, um, is good. There wasn't really much of a story behind everything, and what story there was very cheesy. But the chase, like just the constant sort of chase and stalking of the alien, is a cool dynamic that worked for it well. Setting up, the girl being in the boys' room now with him, because of the scare, there is something in her closet. Um, the babysitter turns off the VHS, and she says that it's BS, and she then turns around and spots something peeking at her from around the corner.
Yeah, we had to
Which,
pause it, by the way, to actually see what it was. My bad.
yeah, and it turned out to be the alien around the corner. But she thinks that it's one of the kids playing a trick on her, so she runs upstairs and yells at them for playing a trick on her, and they denied doing that, and the little girl ends up telling her that she's kind of scared, and that's why she came in here to sleep with him, and
Oh yeah, the
the
boy did
baby.
something really funny, like where it goes back into like they just do not give a fuck what she says, and she was like, "Well, just go to bed," and he's like, "Well, we could get to bed if you'd stop jiggling our fucking door handle." He didn't go in like that, but
Yeah,
so
which that kind of reveals that they've been dealing with or
some
they've been
scary
like,
shit.
yeah, they had a trick played on them too.
Yeah, some scary shit. Yeah.
So the the babysitter, says like it's not real, and she denies going and checking up on their door or anything like that. Uh, so she decides that she's gonna go down the hall and go check out the little girl's closet. And lo and behold, she gets in there and she starts to hear a metal sound coming from the closet. And she says like hello. She's like a little bit spooked out, but then she's like, you know what? I'm just overplaying myself. So she decides to dip and go back downstairs, and she is talking on the phone for a minute, and decides to go ahead and watch some of the VHS. Kind of like you were saying, there's really no justification or why she does it, because I mean, even just the thought of how would she know that there's like more tapes to like multiple tapes on it? How would she know that there's like an
Yeah, I know.
anthology going on?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but anyways, we get to the third segment, and we've got this sort of seemingly normal looking girl driving down a like dark road. She's
It was
listening
so
to like a
fucking bad.
Halloween station on her radio, some type of like
Yeah.
Halloween show that they're doing. But she notices that she's starting to run out of fuel pretty bad. She has a paper map for whatever reason, such like an archaic thing, especially if this is sort of placed somewhere around 2010 2013 even.
She's got a digital phone, by the way, like an
Yeah.
iPhone.
To get to New York too, you would have thought, because she's off the interstate and she's trying to get back onto it. But you would have figured that you'd just be on the interstate in general and you would know where a gas station is. But I guess maybe it could even be that this gas station is one that she saw assigned to. We can give a benefit of the doubt, and it's way off the interstate, like 5 miles down the road.
I do like the name of
But
the gas station, though. Last Chance Gas Station. Yeah.
yeah, it literally is her last chance.
Yeah.
But she ends up stopping at the gas station, right? She finally gets to it, and she's kind of pissed off that there's not an attendant to pump her gas, which yet again, this is sort of one of those things where it's like, that seems so old. Like, you don't have gas attendants coming out to pump your gas. the gas station, like it could be like a government ran thing, but
Mhm.
it's called Last Chance Gas Station, and it's obviously like a country, like backwards sort of thing. I don't know. In a way, the whole gas station and the whole scenario with it just seems sort of convoluted. Like it doesn't make sense. The fact she's got an iPhone, but she's using a paper map.
Oh
He's
yeah,
trying
yeah,
to
just all
get
that.
gas
Yeah,
pumped for her.
yeah. None
Which
none
like
of it makes
gas.
sense.
She goes up to the door to knock on it, and it's like a private door for employees only. But she knocks on it to see if somebody will come out. She sits there for sort of a second, and then off to her left, all of a sudden, sort of like a sound jump scare happens, and you see Art the Clown get sort of like kicked out onto the street. And the gas attendant comes behind him, and he's like, "Get out of here! I don't know what kind of psychopath rubs their feces and piss all over the walls of a bathroom." So I guess maybe he let him into the bathroom or something like that.
Mhm.
But just thought it was homeless person needed to use the bathroom bad, whatever. But yeah, he kicks him off, telling him to not come back, and the attendant starts to fill her tank, and then he hears a noise inside the gas station. He decides to go inside and investigate. She is waiting for a few minutes. As far as like our film sort of sense, this maybe would have been a good time for them to leave like 2 minutes, of just pause, like sort of a silence, have some sounds, some creepiness happening. And there's a little bit of it, but it's really only about 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Um, but she immediately is like in the gas station, walks through the door, and is trying to figure out where this dude is. Well, she starts hearing some like, crunching, like some. So she decides to go check it out. Right? She opens up the door slowly, and it's revealed to be Mr. Art the Clown, quite literally sawing this dude's body up. Like he sawed off hands, like limbs,
yeah,
and he's sawing the head. And he just finishes sawing it up and lifts it up, and he's like smiling and looks at her and all
yeah.
this.
But before you go on, let me just explain this. It went from 0 to 100
Real quick.
like the most gore we got was a hand being chopped off, which there was no blood, and then just a pregnant lady's belly being slashed open, and that was only a little bit of blood. And now we have a fucking head being chopped off in art. Like I'm telling you, it caught me so off guard with just how kind of weird the gore was, and it wasn't really all that crazy at the very beginning. Then he's chopping off the fucking gas station attendant's head, and like his body parts are in a million pieces.
But she runs out of the gas station. She gets into her car. She doesn't even take the pump out. She drives off, and the pump just comes out. But she's gone. Art, uh, she sees him on the side of the road, like begging for a ride or whatever. Like literally, a minute or two after leaving the gas station and speeding off. So it's kind of showing like how he's supernatural in some ways there. Eventually, she's like trying to get on her phone. It's not working, and then her phone dies. And you can see here where we were talking about how it's an iPhone, and you have like the big screen, and it's showing the battery dead or whatever is honestly kind of comical. So she's so focused on her phone, and she's driving, probably swerving on the road, and then she looks up, and there's a van literally like right in front of her. So she swerves off
Oh yeah,
and ends
Jordan
up
was going,
going off
look
the
up,
road.
look up.
Yeah, she ends up like swerving off the road, and I do want to bring this up because um, it's a little bit like wrong in some way. Uh, but she ends up like deciding to leave, right? After she, had just swerved off the road, and as far as the visual, since it looks like she sort of drove off into the forest. Well, when she decides to leave, she's literally just right on the side of the road, like on the shoulder. So it's kind of a breakup there. It's like what happened, and that's just kind of that's a director fault there. I'll point that out, but
Yeah.
um So she decides to, start driving again, and Art turns out to be behind her seat. He puts like plastic wrap over her face, and she has a struggle. She eventually breaks it, but she breaks it apart and she slams on the brakes, and that gives her a chance to escape. And Art literally gets his face like slammed into the dashboard. He does that, so she escapes. She gets out of the car because the car literally is sort of stalled out, and he's in it, so there's not really much chance for her to drive. But she runs off into the forest, and she finds a shed. She gets into the shed. She locks herself up, and he walks up and starts banging on the door. Yeah, eventually she sort of hears him like walking away. It's obvious he sort of gave up. She sort of dozes off to sleep a little bit, as anybody would. You just got in a car wreck, essentially, like her head scuffed up from it. She starts to hear some noise, and eventually she notices that Art has dug a hole up through the dirt ground in this shed and comes through. He sort of attacks her a little bit with this like makeshift cane that's sharpened, I guess. He
Yeah, it
whips
had
her
like
with it a few
different.
times.
Yeah, it had different. Like it had like a syringe on there. It had like broken pieces of glass. It had like a box cutter and like nails. It was just I like that. You
Yeah, it
know.
was kind of odd as like a slasher's grab bag.
Yeah.
Which I mean, that could even be most of what covers up his signature bag that he totes around with him. So she ends up picking up a scalpel that came off the ground and stabs him in the eye. Manages to find a knife out of it and stabs him in the back. So she doesn't really know the supernatural part of this guy. She thinks it's literally just a crazed murderer that did this. So she thinks at this point he's dead. Well, she runs, gets out of the shed, gets out of the forest, and she notices a car driving down the road. She flags him down and manages to get in.
Hmm.
And she's, like completely beaten up, like hair torn off, skin torn off her face, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And she's explaining to the dude what happened,
Which
but mainly just.
this dude's acting it was horrible.
And he's like your basic Poindexter too,
You know,
like
like
your
fucking nerd,
cliche.
never talked to a girl before, and now he's put in this situation where this girl is she's covered in blood and cuts, and he like doesn't know what to do. Only thing he can ask is what happened? What happened? So she
And
has to
he's like
scream at
supposed
him,
to be the
just drive.
protector. So she screams at him to just drive off, and he starts to, and he still sort of asks some questions, but she's like, I don't know. And he's like, all right, we're gonna get you to a police station. It's very close by. Just be strong for now. It's like 30 seconds later, this car comes up behind them, and it's like blaring the horn. It's obviously that's something you'd expect Art to do in a car, like that old guy that has like a need for speed, and he's behind them just blaring the horn. So he decides to like swerve around them. She says, "It's the clown, it's the clown." He swerves around them and gets right up beside them. And the dude looks over and sees him, and Art is like laughing or whatever. And he pulls up a handgun and shoots the dude in the head.
Which is
And
fucking wild, dude. Oh, before we get into it, though, I do want to bring something up. Right? He dug a hole from the outside to get inside the shed. Right?
Yeah.
That's a realistic way of somebody trying to get in. Even though it's not like nobody would dig a fucking hole, they would just try to break
it'd
the hole
take
down.
forever.
Yeah. The fact that they tried to make that as a realistic thing, since he can't get through the door, it's locked. But the fact that he ran at like fucking Mach 3 from the gas station to get in front of her while she's driving on the road to stand and hold a sign, that pissed me off.
Well, that's the thing though, is I think the him being on the side of the road, I interpreted that more as like a supernatural thing, because he is like a demon, and that sort of like cements that in a way. Like obviously he's teleporting around, he's ending up in places he's not supposed to be, because like even when the thing happens with the van and she's off on the side of the road, he's suddenly in the back seat of her car. Because even if it's supernatural, yeah, I still get what you're saying. It's a little bit of like a, why do this when you can do that sort of
It's
situation.
not consistent. Yeah, it's just not consistent for me.
Yeah.
The realistic versus the supernatural.
After some time, she regains consciousness, right? Is like sort of dazed, and she looks to her right and sees like a bunch of bloody tools and stuff. Then she looks to her left and notices Art is right there smiling at her. And
Laughing
he's
at her.
pointing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like laughing and pointing, and it starts to show like all these things on her body. She's got like uh obscenities wrote on her, like whore, slut, um, all this. And then she notices literally her body is
Other people's skin.
when it shows the overhead shot, like the full thing, it's like pretty obvious that it's sort of CGI edited. Like her head is
Yeah, her head was, yeah.
it's
really
literally
weird.
just like photoshopped, and like it sort of looks like she's smiling and like just sort of like nervously looking around like this. It looks like, I don't know, like it looks like something you'd see at like a Universal exhibit or something like that.
Yeah, it was really weird.
It was bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, I mean, that's that one for me personally. I mean, that one was my favorite because it just felt the most like Terrifier to me. Uh, I mean, literally, like the short film itself for that felt to me as if they were trying to sell the idea of doing a film like that. Like they knew they wanted to make a film like Terrifier towards the end of making this. It's very gory, which like I said before, I'm not a big fan of gore. There's some scenarios where I like gore. Terrifier 2 sort of really rubbed me the wrong way for gore for a while though.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming Terrifier 3, when we go watch that, is probably going to do a lot more for me on that aspect, and I'm probably not going to want to watch any gore for a long time. But I like how it shows how he likes to like egg people on, and he likes to get them to sort of this point where they show anger, resentment towards him for helping him or even showing him the time of day. That almost sort of gives him like permission to execute a them or do something terrible to him, and he gets even more enjoyment out of doing it. I think it, sort of shows the same story ideas that they like to do with Terrifier 2, how there's a girl that's innocent and she just wants to get away from him. She wants to get away from, all this and just do what she was trying to do in the first place. But she eventually has to crumble into attacking him and fighting him to be able to leave. And then there's like innocent bystanders that get roped into the situation that he'll either just kill out of the sheer fact that they're witnessing what's going on, or he'll kill them because they're trying to help out the innocent girl. And he plays up a lot of his antics while killing too, like goes over the top with carving the dude's body in half, shooting the dude, sawing her into the pieces that she was left in. But I personally, I felt like the cinematography was great. I loved the shots in the opening. I thought that it really set it up for a creepy sort of thing happening. The gas station looked very great.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that it was not necessarily what you'd expect for a gas station during that time. The shed was sort of cool. I mean, it literally just could have been something in somebody's backyard. So as a set piece, I didn't really find it to be anything explicitly amazing. But whenever they're in the chase scene and the innocent dude is like driving her away, I thought that the town is like this sort of very like small town USA, like very creepy at night. Everything's shut down. I loved how that looked. I thought that was amazing. The one thing that I did hate about the cinematography, and I know you're going to bring this up too, the camera filter that they had over the entire time. This like VHS sort of scratchy look. I liked that, but it was so intense that it was taking away from the visual while trying to watch. I also, I mean, as far as art style, I like the antics part of his style, and I like how sort of like dry and creepy it is. I've never been huge on his gore stuff. Like, there's some of it that I'm kind of like, oh, that's cool, but then there's like the over the top stuff with his gore that sort of just gets to be a little too much for me. I personally really liked his style more in the first film. I liked how he still had sort of the antics and everything, but he liked to like more so drug his victims and put them in this dark facility, because that's what the first Terrifier film did. It's based in this apartment complex that has sort of this dark facility up under it. I really love that sort of atmosphere. It's very like backroomsy sort of feel. The acting was sort of fine in this, is very bare bones like the rest, but that's kind of what you could expect from a film this low budget. But also just Terrifier in general has acting like that.
All around really bad. This movie had a budget of $500,000. So that
I didn't even
kinda,
think it was that much. I thought it was like 10K or something.
to be honest, there's really no effective storytelling. I think this was supposed to be a fun thing, a fun project.
Yeah, because
It's
this was I think this was their first thing off of writing like the first sort of initial short film that was shown at like a festival that had Art the Clown in it.
it was just a big kill fest. I think the reason why I liked this second segment so much was just because of the fact that it made sense a little bit. This one, it just wasn't great. I just didn't like it. I don't like how art was inconsistent with how realistic some of the things were. Like, girl's acting was just kind of really bad. The nerd pissed me off because of how bad his acting was, but I mean, he was only there for like 5 minutes anyway. So the best part of like the acting was whenever Art pulled up beside them when they're driving and just fucking laughing at them, and then just points a gun and fucking shoots the guy. It was just so like, I did not know that was gonna happen. I just didn't know. So that was effective. The film burn was so jarring. It was so bad, and it took away from everything.
It was like their yearly Halloween Snapchat
Yeah,
filter.
make it make sense that those obscenities are, just put into
Yeah.
her skin. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't really like that part. That was just kind of, it didn't make much sense because he's never really done stuff like that. I mean, he's done body horror stuff with girls like parts, but I don't think he's really done obscenities like that. Not that I can remember. He does usually always end up mostly playing off of women as
Yeah.
far as like his sort
Now
of
again, though,
detailed like antique type stuff.
this is the first film that features art. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's really hard to try and compare art to all these different films because this is the first one. So a lot of it makes sense that it doesn't make sense. Basically, the last story piece, really fucking bad. She's really fucking freaked out after seeing the girl's skin, all just like a massive skin graft with the obscenities sketched into her skin. She tries turning it off and it doesn't turn off. She's like sitting there pressing the fucking button over and over again. And then eventually she takes the tape out, throws it on the ground. She's sitting there looking in the reflection. I don't know if she put the tape back in or if the VCR just started playing again, but it showed her. At some point, Art's just sitting on the couch. She keeps looking behind her and Art's not there, and she looks back at the TV and Art is there. I don't know. I can't remember what happened. At this point, I'm just gonna let Jordan take over because at this point I was fucking done with this horrible movie.
She sees Art start to get up and come creeping behind her in the reflection screen, and she takes the tape out, kind of struggles but gets it out. I think she kind of like rips it. And
Yeah.
then she throws it on the ground, crushes it. She then gets a call. Or did that part already happen? Yeah, that part already happened.
No, yeah, that's right. She gets a call.
She's the girl from the third segment, and it's the call that she made to the police, which
Yeah.
she thought was a dispatcher, but it was actually the babysitter the whole time.
Yeah.
Which I guess is supposed to be like a plot twist of some sort.
Really fucking confusing. Like to me, it was like, okay, so is the tape kind of like a foreshadowing, like this thing is gonna happen? Like, I didn't know where they were gonna take it.
Yeah.
So,
And then shortly after she crushes the tape, she hears the kids screaming upstairs. So she starts to run to go up the stairs, and as she's running and gets right up to the bottom of the staircase, she sees Art at the top, and
Yep.
he's laughing at her and pointing at her, and then points to the room and all this and is laughing. She starts crying, and then she eventually looks up and she notices he's just gone. So
Yep.
she runs up the stairs and gets up to the room, and she opens up the door, and the final scene of the movie is that the kids' heads are severed on the bed.
it like plays like this at the beginning of the movie. Tia, the little girl, was like, I think she said, "Is that clown real?" or whatever. That was, I think, the last words of the movie. I'll go ahead and give my rating on it. Yeah, this gets no rating from me. I appreciate bad movies. I do. But this one was fucking horrible. By the end of it, I was waiting for it to be over with. And I didn't even want to fucking do the review on it. I didn't even want to have to revisit this movie. It was so bad.
I mean, I don't know. For me, like, overall, I think I'd probably put it in like a 3. It's got stuff that brings it down. I mean, obviously, if it's a movie that's like this, very low budget, very simple things going on, for me, it can still be a 5 if it's all done right. I think it's mainly just like the first segment, it being Art looks very sort of like early stages, and then by the second segment, or even by, I can't remember if he's shown in one of the transitions right after that, but he looks like Art does today, mostly. So I thought that was kind of a killer for me. Just some of the inconsistency as far as effects and stuff like that go, because like the effects in the third segment look pretty okay. They don't look bad. Like I was saying, in that first segment, you see the hand get chopped off and it just looks like crap. It looks like something from like a 1940s special effect. So I just, that kind of killed it for me. And then I just don't like a lot of body horror stuff. It was not particularly too bad in this movie, so I won't really say that it's enough to bring it down to like a very low rating at all. Although I didn't really care for like the in the first segment. I thought that was just kind of a stupid add-on that didn't really make much sense. I think it would have been much better to just have it be cult leaders that just want to sacrifice bodies or whatever and like kill them and drink the blood. I thought that would have been enough. The second segment I thought was great. I thought that it did a really good job at what it was worth. The only things that really brought it down were mainly just the acting was very eh. The final segment though I thought was great. I thought that they sort of nailed exactly what they were wanting to do with the movie that came afterwards, and I would have much rather them sort of kept it consistent enough for the entire movie. Mainly just make the third or the first segment a little bit more, just bring it up more, like have better special effects, maybe reshoot some stuff in the first segment is
Yeah.
really all that my main complaints are. That and like the transition stuff doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense why the kid got the tape. It doesn't make sense that it was a surprise to him that he even had the tape.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense that the babysitter wants to watch like 15 minutes of it with the kids right over there to make sure that it's okay, instead of just finishing Night of the Living Dead and then letting the tape be up to the parents' discretion.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense why she keeps going back to it, why she knows that it's an anthology and knows that there's going to be more tapes on this. Like it's not like she found a full chest hidden somewhere of the Poughkeepsie tapes. It's that she found a tape in her kid that she's babysitting's trick or treat bag, which could just be like something that was taped onto something off of TV, like a simple horror film.
Yeah.
And also like the idea that the first segment is literally the most messed up out of everything. She goes back after. Like you don't go back after that. It should have started with the second segment and
Yeah, that's what I
then
was saying. You just
maybe had the third segment into the first.
like you can justify her going back and watching the tape and also letting the kids watch all of the first tape or
Yeah.
the first segment if it's the second segment.
Personally, I didn't mind the transition segments all too much, but the final little piece with like the kids' heads up at the top of the stairs and everything, I thought was just about as close as you could get to like hot garbage. Like it was
Yeah.
so cookie cutter, you knew it was gonna happen. The only things that I'll give as far as that goes, as far as like positivity, I mean, obviously you had like on the TV screen Art coming out from behind like the very narrow little pipe, but his
Yeah.
whole body's like masked behind it somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something you'd see in Terrifier. Cool little, scene to have in there. And then him being in the TV screen and like noticing her and all that sort of
Knocking
stuff.
on
Like
the TV screen, yeah.
yeah, like I thought that was cool. It's not something that's unique in any sort of way, but it was nice visual. But everything else about the scene I just didn't like. I didn't think that it made any sense, and I would have much rather they actually have like a situation where like she just starts seeing all of the different monsters, and maybe have it where like it eventually leads up to her going to check the kids' room and Art's like in there and he's like carving something. Maybe don't show the kids' bodies if he's carving because that would have obviously taken them out of releasing this in any sort of way. But just have it where like he's hovering over something, carving it, and he looks behind and smiles at her. And that's the end of the movie. But yeah, overall, it's not bad. It's not great, but it is good. And I think that for what it's worth and what it is, I think that he did a pretty good job. And I think that it was worth a watch just to sort of see what they had as far as the thought process and leading into the first Terrifier.
Reluctantly, that is the first film to go into
The
The Book of Dread.